Wonderful. Well, welcome to Platinum Salon FJ. My name is JC Chang. I am the Vice President of Taiwanese American Professionals. And thank you. It is my pleasure to be your MC here in this room for our 3 panels. And our first topic of the day is going to be big data and e-commerce. Big data provides companies tools to study how they operate and provides valuable insight into the behavior of their customers. Big data is becoming an essential part of just about every industry. How essential? Well, let me go ahead and introduce our moderator for today's panel, and he will introduce you to our expert panelists, and we will discuss this topic in further detail. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming from Big Data LA, Mr. Subhash D'Souza. Round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, JC. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking time to spend this Saturday with us today. So, just quickly, in today's day and age, e-commerce is a several billion-dollar industry. A lot of this is being fed by data that's being used to help make businesses better at what they do, especially how consumers use their websites as well as becoming omnipresent in their businesses and their life. Case in point, Amazon is the biggest e-commerce company out there. It's a software behemoth. Pretty much everyone out there uses Amazon. I mean, at least I do. But this does not mean that there are other websites that are not doing less. In fact, I see a lot of brick and mortar companies currently trying to catch up with Amazon as well as give them a run for its buck. So, today's talk is primarily going to be about big data, e-commerce, but it's also about challenges that are being faced by several of these e-commerce companies and how they tackle using big data. So with that, I'm going to first start with introductions. So I'm Subhash D'Souza. I run a conference called Big Data Day LA. It's a completely free conference. I do this once a year, and this is the 4th year we're running it. We expect about 1,200 attendees this year. And feel free to go to the website. It's called bigdatadayla.com and register yourselves. I also run a user group called the Los Angeles Big Data Users Group with about 2,200 members. For my work, I have my own consulting company, and I also work with Toyota Motor North America as a big data architect. With that, I'm going to start with introducing the panel, and I'm going to call them up on stage, and then we can give them a round of applause. So we're going to first start with Harrison Tang. He's the CEO and co-founder of Spokeo. Harrison? Our next panelist for today is going to be Douglas Cohen, data scientist at Snapchat. At number 3, we have Raj Babu, founder and CEO of Agile ISS. Next, Sang Han, data scientist at KDM. And finally, we have Eric Haberman, founder and CEO of Hawk Media. So with that, we're going to start off with introductions. I would like each of the panelists to talk a little about yourselves and a little bit about what your companies do. So we'll start off with Harrison, and then we'll move on to Eric at the end. So Harrison, please start.
All right.
Have a seat, by the way.
All right. Well, so first of all, thank you for having me here. And I'm the co-founder and CEO of Spokeo. Actually, Spokeo is my first and only job so far, so it's my best and worst at that. So so the conference asked me to kind of share my experiences, and love to be here. So Spokeo, if you haven't heard, is a people search engine that helps over 18 million people search and connect with others. We organize about 12 billion publicly available information and make them very, very easy to use so that we can empower people with people intelligence to make very, very informed decisions. So examples such as helping adoptees finding their long-lost biological families, or helping people research before they date, or helping businesses catch fraudsters, law enforcement catch bad guys. So we are, I would say, pretty known brand in the space, and and I'm very, very glad to be here to kind of share what we do and how it affects big data and how we leverage big data to help our business.
Hi, I'm Doug. I work at Snapchat. So in the past, I worked at Facebook and Instagram doing similar kind of data science, machine learning work, helping them make informed decisions on product and advertising and things like that with their massive audience. So lots of data to drive those. If anyone doesn't use Snapchat, it's a chatting tool that also has a lot of kind of broadcast social media functionality that's been getting very popular. So we're just getting started. Growth is really great, so things are ramping up and doing well. So that's a lot of what I do. In the past, I worked in some other industries that are also tech-related, like e-commerce, more entertainment, specifically online advertising too, so kind of a varied background. But yeah, happy to be here and talking to everyone and sharing what I can.
Hello. Hi, this is Raj Babu here. I am the founder and CEO of Agile ISS. Agile ISS is a cloud and data intelligence services company. We focus in West Coast. We primarily help our clients migrate their applications from the traditional computing to cloud computing, and also how to use big data or big data technology to kind of build their intelligence and solutions. So that's what we help primarily with media and entertainment, retail, consumer goods, consumer electronics in this region, where they can use the data and
our audience audio. How many of you are from investment banks audio? Just raise your hands. Anyone from investment banks? What about banks in general? Okay, awesome. Online e-commerce sites, anyone from e-commerce? I mean, anyone, okay. What about retail firms? Oh, we got some, any retail brick and mortar? Anything? Just want to tailor our questions to the audience. Technology? Any technology audio? Okay, quite a few. Healthcare? If you have anyone from healthcare, okay, one. And government? Anyone from the government audio? Okay, nobody. Okay, that's good. We don't need to worry about privacy then. Any of the industries you missed? I mean, pretty much thought I covered all of them. Okay, that should help you guys. I mean, tailor your answers based on the audience that we have audio. So since this is a panel about big data and e-commerce, we'll address questions relating to the collection of data and use of that data analytics for decision making and growth. I would also touch on some privacy concerns in the big data area. So we'll get started with questions for everyone. We'll start with Harrison, but then our next questions will start off with Eric and so on and so forth.
That's
So-
fair.
So our first question would be Harrison, and please feel free to everyone to follow through once we go with Harrison. We'll start with how would you describe the phenomenon of big data in layman's terms?
Great. Well, first of all, like, I think a lot of people didn't raise their hands. So you're here just to hear funny jokes or something? But, but anyway, in layman's term, okay, so big data, well, first of all, big data has been around for a long, long time. So what is big data? I think big data is basically helping, basically the analysis, right, of data or the storage, warehousing, visualization, right, transform, extraction, just basically the processing of data in a very, very large amount of scale. That's basically what big data means. And the truth is, big data didn't just started 2 years ago or 3 years ago when you started hear this term, but rather it started a long, long time ago. And big companies have been using them, right, to their competitive advantage. So why do people start hearing this term big data just starting about 2, 3, or 4 years ago? And I think the reason is as follows, right? The first thing is the advent of cloud computing, making parallel processing very, very easy and very, very cheap and accessible to not just big companies like IBM, Amazon, and Microsoft, but rather to small and medium-sized businesses like you and us that we can use. In fact, a lot of startups doing machine learning, doing artificial intelligence, they only have 4 or 5 people. And without cloud computing, you cannot do this, right? Because previous cloud computing, when we first started in 2006, there's no cloud. You have to actually buy and manage hundreds of servers. In fact, we still have some of those today that we don't know what to do with. But now with the cloud, small and medium-sized businesses, small teams can do that and make it more accessible to more people, to more businesses. And other factors such as open source technologies, like parallel processing technologies, big data storage, Hadoop. If technical guys here probably have heard of that term. Hadoop, we use Amazon DynamoDB, right? So open source technologies such as these makes big data prices and costs a lot cheaper. Another thing is other open source technologies, statistically modeling like R, language like R. Those things makes the modeling, the statistically modeling, right? That was very, very expensive and only available to big businesses previously, and now everyone can use it. So I think with all these factors, mainly the cloud computing and the open source movements have really drive the big data movements and the industry forward.
Yeah, that was perfect. Totally agree. That's, I think the software becoming cheaper, hardware becoming cheaper through cloud, through open source has completely changed everything. And I think what's going to be interesting going forward is as big data starts to change other industries. So not just tech, going into healthcare, we're already seeing a lot of that. And there's a lot of other verticals that can stand to improve efficiency and just how they operate using big data. And I think that's a lot of what's going on the past few years. So that's all I have to add. That was a great introduction.
That was great. But to my clients, I say, many of my clients say, like, I'm a small business or a mid-sized business. I don't have huge volume of data. The thing is, many people have a false perception. Yes, there is a big data, the volume aspect of big data, but there is another key important aspect of big data, the power of big data many people miss. See, there was only structured data, which you need to have Oracle or SQL Server, like this expensive software. But the thing is, it was very time consuming. It's not only the software cost, it was very time consuming to get the data into that systems. The big data today, you need to know where your customers are, you need to find social media, you need to find their job postings, what kind of projects they are willing to, they're building, what is the focus, what is their budget. It's all in different places. You need to collect this information in 25, 30 different places, and then you need to bring it together and then make a meaningful sense. A structured data, which is the traditional data systems, can never do that. It's very difficult to do that. The big data technology, so it helps for the variety. When you say big, it's not really the volume, it's also the variety of all these different data. You have to take it and you have to make some sense of it. Because see, in the previous days, the customers was wherever you were, geographically locked. Today, entire, much broader market is here. So you can understand your customers much farther away, geographically far away, by doing analysis and understanding that. So that variety of data and trying to make some meaning out of it is also big data. So please don't think big data means it has to be only huge volume. Big data is completely meaningful, even a mid-sized organization, where you have to take all these variety of data and make some meaningful sense.
Hi, I'd like to reverberate what Harrison said. The first point is that big data is actually, or cloud computing is actually someone's computer. It just happens to be that Google owns it, and you're paying money to Google to pretty much rent their infrastructure. So if you really think about it, there's a really funny article where if you look up the word cloud in US patents, you'll see this cloud. It's a very obscure thing, but in reality, it's actually someone's computers that's owned by a company, and they're offering it to you for a certain fee for a certain amount of price for performance. The interesting thing is that, back in the day, you'd go back home and you'd build the computer, and that would be your cloud infrastructure. But then, let's say you needed, you got a lot of demand for your e-commerce site, and you need to increase, the amount of CPU power or performance. You'd have to go and build another computer on top of that, take you maybe a weekend. But nowadays, you can kind of draw a lever and be okay, well, I just need double the performance, and all of a sudden, your computer is now twice as fast. And so I guess those are one of the technological improvements that have been available today, the idea of the ability to virtualize an entire operating system and then delineate that from the actual physical hardware that exists is one of the really cool things that is happening probably in the last couple of years. I think that my prediction for what data will be in the future will be definitely in terms of artificial intelligence. You need someone to analyze it. My job as a data scientist, a lot of times what I do or what people in my field do is you have all this data, and then you'd hire this person, you'd pay him a lot of money, and then he'd make you a graph or a chart and say oh yeah, these people, you should target these people. In the future, we will actually be able to take that job away and then have a algorithm which will actually be able to compute that for you. So that is probably the role of artificial intelligence in terms of big data. It will be able to create your analytics for you, be able to create an idea of what is important for your business, and you won't have to pay this highly educated person, and offer him a job to do something really menial like create Excel charts. And I think that's probably what will happen in the future, and hopefully it'll happen soon. Don't be afraid of the robots.
Yeah, so I'm on a panel with a few brilliant people here, so I'm going to actually emphasize on the question with the layman's term side of this. Basically, and to echo a lot of what Raj said, the idea of big data, and again, it's been around forever, is, to take an example, let's say you're selling a bottle of water, or you have a water company. You have, at this point in time, you have an ability now to collect so much information on every little bit of what you're doing. So on the marketing side, and what I use the most, you can start with, as he mentioned, it used to be, how old is my customer, and are they a guy or a man or a woman, and where are they located? That was about as far as your customer profile went. It was demographic information and geographic. Now, using things like Facebook, thank you, Doug, you can find out what are their interests. Maybe someone that drinks Voss tends to like the finer things in life, and likes to, is a more premium buyer versus someone that's going to buy Aquafina or something else. And these are things that you can actually find in the data these days, and you can collect every little thing that each customer is interested in, what they're interested in the aggregate, and then once they hit, let's say you're selling through your website, every little thing they do, every page they visit on your site, how long they're there, every little piece of data. And so what big data is doing is, now that we have the ability to collect all of these different points, it's actually holding it, hosting it, and then actually reading it. So okay, you have all this information, but how much of that is valuable? What do I actually do now that I can find out that again, my customer is more premium than another. So it's the actionability of it that has been it sounds like the real focus, and that's the most important part, is we've been able to collect this stuff for a long time, and now on the individual level, because of hardware and software, we're able to, as small and medium businesses, have all of this information. But the issue that comes up is, let's say you are a small business with 5 employees, you now have millions and millions of data points, or even billions. Who's going to take the time to read that? How can you read that? And now to echo your point is, that's where artificial intelligence comes in. That's what is happening in that world.
Thank you very much, guys. I agree with all of your points. I'm going to start with the next question, but we're going to I'm going to start timing you. Sorry. It's too loud. So I'm going to start timing you. It's a minute. You're going to get a minute for the next questions. Please stick to that, a minute or less. So I'll start with you, Doug. How does data enable e-commerce companies like Snapchat grow and become better at decision making?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, data informs almost everything we do. Any type of feature improvement, product improvement that we're going to do, we first look to see, does the data support this idea, this concept? And then when we roll out a new feature, it's thinking about the rollout strategy. How do we look to see what signals say this feature or this product or this, whatever is actually performing the way we thought it would. So, and there's a lot of ways to do that. And we have that flexibility to really look at the data because we have hundreds of millions of people coming to the app every day. So we have tons of data. We're able to cut our audience into segments and see how each segment reacts to a new feature. Do they use it? Do they not use it? So we're able to get very nuanced in our understanding of how people use the app with these huge sample sizes. So that's probably the most direct one. There's other kind of more eclectic things that we do, which also are informed by data. But does that answer your question?
Yeah. Raj, can you answer the same question, please?
Data basically, today, the companies on the marketing budget, how much to spend, and even the marketing budget before they used to fix before entire amount, now they fix. They initially test the market. Based on the initial feedback, they immediately change the budget, whether to increase it or decrease it. So I have customers in media and entertainment, in technology. They are complete, how to market, where to focus, what geography, what profile, everything, they make those decisions. If they go to so any finance approval they need, the head of the division has to go and they get the approval based on the data. Without data, it's an opinion, and it's very difficult for them to get the approval or justify their point in these days in businesses. With your opinion, you need data.
Actually, I'm in kind of a curious situation where, since I work for DARPA, a lot of the things that we work on are inactionable. So I can't really talk too deeply about this. But one of the things is that, in data science, you want to make as little assumptions as possible. So a lot of times you just don't want to make any assumptions, so you have to use data to create that. Oops, sorry.
I think they're trying to get us to speak closer into the mic so you can hear us. Yeah, so in terms of how we use the data to create action, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. We're constantly monitoring the reaction from the marketing we're doing, meaning, if we're going to go, Facebook ads are a huge thing that we run, and so if we're running Facebook advertising and we're seeing that we're getting all this traffic from all these different customer profiles, targets, all these different copy, creative, and all these different types of advertising, we can start to track which ones are appealing the most through the data and why. So if we have 5 different variations of an image, which image, is actually performing the best, and then analyze that to see, okay, this is what we need to do to maximize this, and start building off that knowledge to actually make sure that the money we're spending is making more and more of a return and increasing that ROI.
Harrison?
Cool. So I'll answer this question in the e-commerce context. Well, earlier, like Doug has said, the companies nowadays are using big data to analyze the user behaviors to create personalized experiences. At the end of the day, what does this mean? This means more dollars, okay? So my answer is very short. Big data brings in more dollars. And how do we do that? So talking about personalized experiences, A/B testing, right? A/B testing payment pages to the extreme of the color of the pay buttons, right? If you use red, probably doesn't do as well as green, which implies progression. So using big data to analyze user behavior so that you can create personalized experiences through A/B testing, that brings in dollars, right? Another example is understanding your audience better. There's a free tool out there called Facebook Audience Insights, or you can pay something to Axiom. And Spokio today is actually building a product that will launch next year that does the same thing to better help businesses and e-commerce companies understand who your audience are. Like for our company, for example, we over-index from 35 to 45 and 45 to 55, and we under-index from 25 to 35, right? So we know who our audience are. Our audience skews a lot more female, right? So that informs our design team and product team to cater, to customize our experiences to cater to these customer needs. And lastly, for e-commerce, big data actually helps fight fraud. In addition to bringing revenue, it can mitigate your risk. So someone says that they are buying something, let's say buying the furniture from the middle of nowhere in Utah. That's kind of weird, right? So big data and machine learning technologies, and actually a lot of businesses are using Spokio today to do that, to catch fraud, to mitigate risks. So at the end of the day, big data drives more money by bringing more revenues and reduce costs.
Thank you. Okay. So the next question I think is going to be a little bit of a controversial question. And we'll start with Eric, but once we're done with everyone, we'll open this up just for a couple of minutes and get all of your opinions if you agree or disagree with your co-panelists. Again, keep your answers to a minute or less so we can get through this. So is there value to be realized from big data analytics, or is it just hype?
Good question. Oh, sorry. Good question. I wouldn't say it's just hype. I would say that we definitely, as an agency, deal with a problem that we try to push against, which is being too analytical and too data-driven. And the reason being, the data gives you a ton of answers. Don't get me wrong; it's very valuable, but it's also about how you read it. Because when you're looking at things in a vacuum and you're looking at data, you don't always think about the logic side of it and the broader picture. The example being, like, I get back to Facebook advertising. You can track every time someone clicks an ad, and within a 28-day window, if they buy something on an e-commerce site. A lot of people that are in e-commerce will know that. But what that does is tells us, okay, if we spend money on advertising, how many people click and how much money do we make? The problem is we're looking at only people that clicked and purchased, and we're only looking in 28 days, which means we're missing out on anyone that just viewed the ad and then went and purchased. We're missing out on anyone that purchased after 28 days. We're missing out on any word of mouth. So what we'll deal with sometimes are really great branded campaigns that are driving a decent ROI in that vacuum. And then we know as a marketing agency, because of our experience, that there's a much broader return happening. There's a lot of other benefits to it, but you're not seeing that in the data. So you have to be very careful with big data and being too data-focused and data-driven and not understanding what you're actually looking at. And that's where the hype comes in. When people say they make all their decisions based on data, well, you don't always have all the data. So being careful there.
Thank you. Sang?
I don't think it's hype. It definitely, like, big data has existed in some form ever since, maybe even 50 years ago, big data existed, but it was called statistics. Nowadays, it's more granular than that, and more information is going to be created every single day. And as a company, you need to take advantage of the fact that data will exist, continue to exist, and in the future, there will be much more of it. And because there's much more of it, you have to figure out how you're going to handle it. You're not going to have some guy who looks, at a chart and says, "These are the actionable insights that I'm going to create for you." You're going to have platforms. You're going to have cloud servers. You're going to have some way to chew through that data and figure out, like, what your next big decision is. And so, yeah, I don't think it's hype.
I'm in the business of servicing my clients, and I deal with many different clients. And based on my experience that I've serviced clients for last 10 years, I can tell big data and cloud is definitely not hype. It's hugely valuable. The value is not even in one stream, it's multiple stream. It gives the capabilities which a customer would never had before. It gives a completely new capability, new view which they never had before in a significantly reduced cost. With the big data and cloud, most of the businesses can easily reduce 50% of more of their cost. So I've seen that many times. I've seen many customers where they had to decide, make a decision of making a $7 million or $12 million capital investment to only a monthly pay as you go. So I've seen that multiple times. So both from the cost point of view, value point of view, and the capability point of view, in all this, I've clearly seen both cloud and big data together are huge. A lot of value can be driven.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Data has changed the way a lot of businesses run and is continuing to change how they run. I also very much agree with what Eric said, that it is one pillar of many that the business stands on. I always go back to Mark Twain saying, liars, lies, and statistics. You have to be very careful with how you use data. So it's a lot that can happen, but needs to be done cautiously and with provisos.
Yeah, big data is definitely not a hype. In fact, it's no longer a competitive advantage. Okay, it's a necessity for every single business out there. If you're an e-commerce company, if you're a business, you're not using big data, then you're falling behind. For example, like every single website, if you start a website, everyone will use Google Analytics. If you're not using Google Analytics, then you're falling behind. If you are not understanding your customers, you're falling behind, right? Earlier I was talking about the Facebook Audience Insight to help you understand your audience. If you're not doing that, you're falling behind. If you don't know who your customers are, you're falling behind. Every business that I know that has more than 30 people has a data science or a data science team. In fact, data scientist is one of the top 5 most sought after job in the United States today. In fact, I would wager that the data scientist here probably makes more than 90% of us here, okay? So sorry to put you tough spot. So data science is not a hype, right? It's every business doing that right now. If you're not doing it, if you're not having those capabilities in-house, then you are going to die, right? So it's a necessity, not a competitive advantage. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So let me just put it in this way. Okay, so we know that big data is not hype, but I'll just rephrase this. There was a recent Gartner report that came out that said 70% of enterprises that tried to implement big data and data analytics actually failed. They were not able to deliver on those promises that they made. So let's put it in that context. I mean, yes, big data is not hype, yet why do companies are not able to deliver on this promise of big data and data analytics and succeed in them? So it's open to all. Anyone can feel free to answer this question.
Well, I don't think that's a function of big data. I think it's a function of it's a new hype word, that there's going to be tons of businesses that pursue the hype without actually having any value or any offering. So of course there's going to be a lot of failure in any time. And it's the same way content marketing is a big thing. And there's all types of, wherever it's going, I'm going to have the Uber of this or the Uber of that. I'd be curious on those statistics in terms of on-demand apps. It's just a fact of there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are probably trying to start businesses and don't actually understand the value of data. That's probably where that's coming from.
Okay. Anyone can feel free to answer.
This is going to be true in so many things. I see that. See what has happened in the last, really in 7 years, or recent 10 years. The technology disruption is huge with cloud and this big data and other solutions, app, and all that stuff. The technology disruption is huge. Information technology was kind of the platform under which all the business was built. Every business needs an information technology. It's the way you automate your business, right? And the technology that was there for last 30 years is being completely disrupted. Whatever was there 10 years back, it's laughable today, some of the technologies. It's useless. And so the challenge with that is all these people who gained the experience in the last 30 years working in those technologies, those skills are not so useful anymore. These are technology and solutions and industry happened, mushroomed in last 5 years, 10 years, and it's completely disrupting everything built over last 30, 40 years. Those people cannot transform to this new technology, so there is a vacuum. That's why you guys all will find challenges hiring the talent who can work in cloud and big data, because there is only so much talent. And all these talent, 70%, 80% of the talent from previous generation cannot help you, they are not effective. So that's the cause for the failure, because they are all in that 30-year, 20-year older technology mindset, and they use this new technology with that old mindset. Obviously, it's going to be wrong. You put a petrol in a diesel car, it won't work. You have to use the right fuel. So these people are all using the wrong way, old way of doing things with the new technology, and that's why they are failing. And you guys will see this not only in big data, in many other, because technology is completely being disrupted now by whatever was happening in the last 30 years. And we need a new generation, new mindset for working in these. And human resource, I see really the talent with the right expertise is the biggest challenge that's going to be there for the next few decades.
Thank you, Raj.
Yeah, I will add this, answer this question in the business context. I think I know a lot of businesses, including ourselves, by the way, the decision makers have made a mistake because with big data, because they are lazy. Okay, what do I mean by that? Big data does not give you answers, right? Like you can't just making a decision on hard decisions on businesses. You cannot at this point in time you cannot offload that to machines. All big data does is to help you achieve the answers, right? So by looking at the data, you can make interpretations. The key thing about decision making is to first form the hypothesis and then use data to back up the hypothesis, to validate, to make sure whether it's correct or not. Right? Talking about this water bottle here, is this half empty or half full? It's in the eye of the beholder. Right? Talking about 1% conversion rate, is it good or bad? I think in the e-commerce world, when you're B2C, working with consumers, I can tell you 1% is amazing. But in the enterprise world, you will probably go bankrupt if you only have 1% conversion rate. So it's all in the context, in the eyes, in the beholder. So big data will tell you, hey, your conversion is 1%. And then you can segment it all you want, and then you go all these numbers. But at the end of the day, you cannot chicken out. You cannot be lazy and say, machines, give me the answer. The machines will only, and the big data will only help you interpret, validate, and then test your hypothesis. Okay?
Thank you. Anyone else wants to take this? Okay, that's fine. The next question, I'm going to start off with Sang. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds. We're running low on time. So just quickly, would you consider privacy concerns closely related to the collection of big data?
I would say this is probably also a responsibility of individuals. You want to minimize your attack vector, meaning that anything that's connected to the internet might be a form or use for someone to access your information. If you happen to have you bought a new refrigerator from Samsung and happens to be internet connected, that might not be the best advice to buy that refrigerator. Also, information that you share on the internet, your social identity is more important to you nowadays than ever. The things that you can get from having access to your Facebook account are almost unlimited. So I would say that yes, more data will be collected about you, but you can do as much to be just understanding where that data is or where it's being collected. How many accounts do you have? How many people know your email? It sounds kind of a black hat to say that you should be everyone should be a security expert. But this is something we do every day. How often do you use your credit card to purchase things that that might be used later in the future to figure something out about you? Your internet presence is as much important to you nowadays than almost your physical presence. because almost anyone can access it from anywhere. So yeah, big data is going to exist. It's going to further in the future be more important, and I think people will need to start to recognize that.
Eric, I'll go with you.
I definitely skew in a different direction on the privacy side. I mean, I do worry about things like identity theft and credit card fraud, things that can happen when you have a lack of privacy. But as far as understanding what's going on in my social world, like having my, all of my data out there, I'm really just not concerned with it. From a personal standpoint, I don't think that I have a lot to hide. So I'm not that concerned. Now that comes down to also how it can and will be used. The same way, if I knew that the government was watching my phone, I don't care because I'm not doing anything illegal. But if they start using that for something further than that can harm me, then it becomes an issue. So it's the use of it more than the worry about having access to it.
Harrison?
I understand that different people have different feelings of privacy, but in my opinion, I don't think privacy means don't share. I think the world is becoming more and more open. Back in the 90s, people would be like, why the hell would people post photos on the internet? But everyone's doing it nowadays. It's part of our daily lives. And a lot of these kind of freedom of information flow has transformed our businesses. Without big data, we will not have all these personalized services. Without big data, we will not have a self-driving car. We will not have shared economy. We will not have Waze and all these things that have transformed our lives. So I think the most important thing going forward, not just for Spokeo, but for other businesses, to understand that privacy is a mutual responsibility between the corporations and businesses. And how do we better build that trust with consumers through better manage of their information, better education of how these informations are used. And I think Facebook has done an amazing job at this, and I think we have a lot of things to learn. But one of the things that I think will happen is that this world will become more and more open, more and more connected, and this kind of big data technologies and data freedom of information flow will make our world a lot better.
Yeah, at Snapchat, this is a really big deal. So I think the privacy is a very context-dependent thing. So for us, our product, privacy is a big part of it. Your messages disappear after 24 hours. You can be certain that nobody else is reading them, those kind of things. So we take it extremely seriously, and it's more intense than I've seen at any other tech organization. So it's considered like a competitive differentiation for us from Facebook, and even at Facebook, I didn't see the level of scrutiny we have at Snapchat. So it's incredible, and I think a lot of people appreciate it, and it's part of why they use our product. So depending on what you're doing, and the importance to the consumer, you may ratchet up privacy, you may ratchet down. It depends on the context. So that's what I found.
No, I agree. I think there are good points made on both sides. I think we all agree it's an open society. I think having open society benefits us all. But just like in an open society, in the physical open society, we have a policing going on so that people don't misuse. I think including the government need to be policed to make sure they don't misuse and nobody else also misuses. But the way to go is not to say, okay, let's not share. I mean, of course, we need to be careful about what we share. We don't want to go and put your credit card information and bank information out there. But other than that, we should build a system where we can be open and still be, our privacy is protected.
Okay, that's a good point. That segments us into the next question. We'll start with you, Raj. Again, 30 seconds or less. Since you said about policing and of data and privacy, would you welcome government regulation that comes and tells e-commerce sites, hey, this is what you can store, this is how long you can store it for? Is this something that you want Big Brother to do for you, or is this something that you want the companies themselves to police themselves in doing?
I think, we have seen this so many times. Regulation is important. Without regulation, it's wild, wild west. Anybody can do anything. Nobody wants that. At the same time, what we don't want is too much regulation. But I think it makes no sense to say, let's not have any regulation. When we say, let's not have any regulation, we are really saying, let's have no rules. And that's not good for anybody. You want rules. You want a framework under which everybody has to operate, what they can capture, what they can store. So you definitely want that. But at the same time, you don't want government to, and this is regulation including for the government, what information they can capture, what information they can use. I think there has to be a framework even for them. But said that, I'm not for not having any regulation, because that kind of completely opens it up. Anybody can do anything, and that's, we have seen in the history, that's not necessarily a good thing.
Douglas, we'll go with you.
Yeah, so this is a good one. I mean, regulators already talk to Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter quite a bit. I mean, so it's already happening in our space. I think it's been positive. I think in general, it's very important information. It needs to be monitored. But I think in general, when we talk about regulation, there's always pros and cons. We talk about the pros being, better security. We don't go into the cons, which are a lot of the benefits we get from tracking this information and the improvements to people's lives that can come from it. So I think, with each case, we need to weigh it and kind of go through that process. And that's already happening in our industry. We're in constant contact. Even internally at Snapchat, we have a huge legal team. Everything that happens data-wise goes through them. It's an intense process. It's more rigorous than anything I've seen, so it's been interesting.
Harrison?
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I think I definitely welcome clear rules and then very, very well-informed regulations. I think what's happening sometimes, unfortunately, is that a lot of regulations are frankly a little bit outdated, and then got outpaced by technical achievements. So let me give an example of Tesla. In some states, you can't even buy Tesla directly. You have to buy it through dealerships, right? So you can't even buy it, right? So that's one of the I think it's a very, very outdated things. If you buy a house, you have to use title companies. And what do they do? Well, I can tell you, they do nothing. But but they only exist because of these regulations, right? So I think earlier we were talking about all these implications of big data and all these amazing things that we can do with big data. And I think if we have well-informed regulators, right, well-informed governments that can make clear guidelines and clear rule books is very, very good. But I'm afraid that sometimes some politicians will actually do these for some other interests and make misaligned and misinformed decisions. And I think that's something that, as a public, we have to do to make sure that we do not squander the initial blossom of all these amazing technologies that's going to come, and that will transform our lives.
Very good point. Let's go, Derek.
Yeah, to echo what Harrison said, there's nothing wrong with well thought through regulation, but the problem is that generally isn't what happens in my experience. And so when it comes to reality, I always worry about regulation because I think the lack of information on the political side, the motivation, and who they're trying, it's usually some sort of very far swung either right or left in terms of it's fear-based a lot of the times, it's anger-based, it's emotionally based, it's not logical regulations that are really there for protection, but it's something that can be marketed as a proposition, et cetera. So I worry a little bit about regulations, but on the other side, there is a balance. You need rules. The Can't Spam Act is a great one when it comes to data collection and comes to, you can't, that's why not everyone here is getting a Viagra email every week anymore. It's really nice not to have those. He still does, but in general, not having that is actually, it can benefit your lives, and that was a well thought out rule that only hurt a small amount of marketers that were doing the wrong thing. And in general, there's also a free market side to it where if companies are collecting my data and using it in the wrong way, I'll probably stop giving that company my business or my data, and the word will get out. That takes a little too long a lot of the times, but there are benefits on that side as well.
Sang?
So I'm not too concerned. I think it's because I feel like a lot of times the regulation that occurs in government is because people really don't understand what the internet is. When they were born, when people in Congress or in politics, when they were young, they didn't have all of these things to access. And I feel like eventually what will happen is as we will grow up or we are growing up, we will move into those positions and actually be the people who actually make that change. And so I feel like as time progresses, regulation and government will actually be better and will actually benefit everyone, and it won't be as awkward. I feel like currently we're kind of in a weird transition state where we don't really know like what this technology is and what it implies. And so a lot of people, because if they see something that's so foreign that they've never seen before, kind of respond in fear. And I think that type of fear transition will eventually like fade away.
Thank you, guys. So we just have a few minutes remaining. We're going to open up to questions from the audience. If you have a question, just please stand. We have a mic over here, Eric, on the table. We could just start. Can someone please hand the mic out so the audience can ask their questions? Oh, I think JC has a mic too. All right, so just raise your hands. I'll come and give you a mic. Please feel free to ask a question. We just have time for a few minutes of questions, so we'll try to get through as many questions as we can.
Oh, hi. I'm actually working for Teradata, which is a data warehousing company, and then we're at the other spectrum. And also, at my free time, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I just want to raise a question for them. So if I don't have a lot of budget to bring in-house a lot of data scientists, what kind of efficient ways, like you mentioned about Google Analytics, Facebook advertising, what kind of efficient services that we can get from the like open source area or whatever?
Anyone want to take that? Just keep your answers short. We don't have too much time, so.
That's a lot of what we do. I mean, Mixpanel is a great tool. Google Analytics is great. Facebook Insights is great. There's a ton of ways to collect data. And honestly, if they're at the point that they can't afford a data scientist, they're probably not that big of a business. So using tools like Google Analytics is probably enough data for the decisions they need to be making. They don't want to get too ingrained in the data. They want to focus on probably bigger picture stuff as well.
Yeah, I'd agreed with that. The SaaS ecosystem is way better than it was 5-10 years ago. You can do so much with just off-the-shelf tools that are relatively cheap per month, maybe even free, and you can get a large percentage of like the benefit you'd get from your data just using these tools without an in-house expert. It's incredible. If you're smart and do your research and look into the tools, there's no stopping you.
If you're looking for a BI kind of Teradata kind of, there's a lot of very comparable and higher capacity tools in the cloud in a significantly lesser cost. I've seen, so companies, if they're open to go to cloud, there are a lot of solutions, Amazon, Google, there are lots of options.
And also ask yourself, is my data really that big, right? Like if maybe your business only supports maybe like 5 or 10 clients, literally the best thing you can do is just ask them, be like, what do you want? Like sometimes people kind of assume that like, there's a magic box, some type of algorithm that will give them information about what their customers want. But really like, these people are companies, or these companies have people in them. You should go ask them. And you should go, like ask them vigorously, like continue to ask them and bug them until they're kind of like sick with you. The HR people might not like you, but like your company will do much better.
Okay, thanks. Just time for one more question. Anyone?
We're out of time.
Out of time? Oh, sorry about that. Okay, sorry guys. A round of applause for distinguished panel. So please give them a. And I guess you guys can stick around, right? If the audience has any question, so feel free to come up and ask.
Yes.
directly.
Well, we can have our speakers. If you guys can hang out outside and you like to ask them any questions, they'll be available. I like to thank Subhash, our wonderful moderator. Please give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
And all of our wonderful panelists today for providing us such wonderful insight into big data. I really learned a lot. Thank you, everyone. We have these certificate of recognition for you guys. I'll pass it out to you guys as you leave. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.